Why should I care about DevOps? DevOps is ridiculously important. And remember, DevOps is the union of people, process, and products to enable the continuous delivery of value to our end users. Now, once again, the most important step here, or point here, is we need to be able to continuously deliver value. So why is it so important for us to continuously deliver value? Well, the speed of business today is so freaking fast that we have to be able to continuously deliver value to be able to keep up with the changes, with everything that's happening. So here's the key concept that you have to remember. If you are not implementing DevOps best practices, your competitors either have or they will, and when they do, they will absolutely out-innovate you. And this isn't just DevOps theory. We've been doing DevOps long enough where we know this is fact. So why is DevOps important? Because you have to continuously deliver value. If you don't, you will be out-innovated, and if you get out-innovated, you become obsolete. And none of us wants to be obsolete.
And I think that that's really a cool way to think about what we're going to talk about today when it comes to DevOps, and that's delivering value. How you doing, everybody? It's me, it's Jay. Welcome back to another AzureFunBytes, and I'm doing one what we call combo. We've done this before, and it's where we bring in somebody with a product that really works great with Azure. And so I'm really super lucky to have the guest that I have today. Is Kat Cosgrove. You can find her at Dixie3 Flatline on Twitter. We spend a lot of time talking about things that have nothing to do with DevOps, which is really cool that finally we get an opportunity to talk about DevOps today. And so that's what we're going to do. But what we're specifically going to be talking about is JFrog Artifactory. It is a way to deliver your applications to clouds such as Azure. And so Kat's going to kind of give me a run through of how that works. We'll kind of compare our notes between Artifactory and Azure, how they can kind of work together with some of the security practices that Azure has by default, and then things that, we can say that Artifactory brings to the table. So we're going to do that. But just to kind of get you a little bit up to speed on what Artifactory is, let's take a look.
Using different software development platforms and tools can bog down the workflow of your software releases. Accelerate the delivery of your releases with JFrog Artifactory, the Universal Artifact Repository Manager. Artifactory is a universal, end-to-end artifact management solution that increases your development speed across any environment. Artifactory automates and manages binaries and artifacts and integrates with your ecosystem and the DevOps tools you use. It provides a single source of truth for all artifacts and their dependencies. As a universal solution, you can choose from more than 27 software build packages. Artifactory is Kubernetes ready, supporting containers, Docker, and Helm charts, giving you full visibility to all dependencies. Use Artifactory as your Kubernetes registry to manage your microservices and containerized apps. Gain productivity across your development ecosystem to build and deliver your software releases faster with JFrog Artifactory. Available on-prem or in the cloud.
And so who's here in the cloud with me today? It's Kat. How you doing, Kat?
I am excellent, Jay. How you doing?
I think I'm doing really good. I'm so happy that we get an opportunity to do this. Like I say, we talk about a lot of nonsense, and that nonsense normally has nothing to do with DevOps. And the two of us do a lot of things involved in DevOps, and I think it's really an awesome opportunity for me to kind of learn a bit more about how you got here, because I really haven't gotten a chance to have that conversation with you. We talk a lot more about what's going on in the world rather than where we came from, and I think it's a really awesome thing that I can learn a little bit more about you, and at the same time you can kind of teach me something. I'll be real, I don't really have a lot of experience with Artifactory, and so thank you.
That's okay. That's what I'm here for. I focus really heavily on 101 level content for DevOps and for JFrog's products in general, because I actually don't have like a super traditional technical background.
Sure.
I did go to college, but I also dropped out of college, and I didn't go for CS anyway. So, and that's an increasingly large number of people in tech these days. Like, I didn't go to college. Well, I didn't finish college. You didn't finish college. Some of the most intelligent, influential people I know in this space dropped out, and or just didn't try at all. And the way things are written for DevOps content is often not like super duper approachable for newbies.
I absolutely agree.
It's a huge problem, and it's not even particularly easy for people who already have industry experience to figure out, because a lot of the content is written from the perspective of somebody who's already like waist deep in DevOps. They already have a lot of domain knowledge and additional context, and it can be really, really hard to like get your feet underneath you when it feels like you're on a rocking ship, you know?
Absolutely.
So I write a lot of 101 level content for that reason. And some of that I will go through today. Sure. I hope that everybody finds it helpful. I built a 2-hour-long DevOps 101 workshop that goes through the entire JFrog platform. It's super useful, and it includes a glossary because there is just too much jargon in DevOps.
I actually believe I have that. Let me grab that workshop. So at some point today, I believe we're going to go through this a little bit, but I want to make sure that if you would like to follow along with the program, I've got this URL for you. It's also in our chat if you want to go ahead and start taking a look at it. But what I'm going to do, Kat, because I want to give us a little bit of a looky-loo before we kind of work on that, is I'm going to go to this application window. Let's go to a Chrome tab. Let's pick up this right here, share. But here we go. This is your workshop. It looks like you've got a lot of really great information about getting an account set up, Docker, Python, code editor. So this is going to lead me into a transition, my segue, because I know I love my segues. You're using Python 3, and I'm curious, did you start writing things like Python? How'd you really get started in doing what you're doing now?
Well, like a lot of people around my age, or a little bit older, I'm 30. I grew up during the time of the internet where it was very cool to have like a GeoCities personal webpage. And thankfully, those servers have been nuked, so nobody can see my shame anymore. But I learned how to write like crappy HTML when I was a kid.
And
same. Yeah, it's true for just about anybody between the ages of like 30 and 45. I think everybody learned that way. And then MySpace became a thing, and it turned out that MySpace didn't strip code from submitted through comment boxes. So you could just use a div overlay to get something like more than top 8 friends or whatever. Now, if they caught you doing this, they would
add blingies and stuff.
Yeah, they would suspend your account if they caught you doing this. And then, Neopets was a thing. And on Neopets, you could make a personal web page for your pets. And it kind of just spiraled out of control from there. So I was a self-taught web developer. I freelanced as a web developer for a while, taught myself JavaScript, wrote a lot of templates for content management systems, usually Joomla. And then I kind of got really tired of doing that kind of web development. So I went to a coding boot camp. I went to Code Fellows here in Seattle and took the Python 401 course. I thought that the data science aspect of Python was super interesting. Machine learning was super interesting to me at the time, and it still is, but I'm less hype about it now. I also really like automation. I don't like repeating myself. I don't like doing menial tasks over and over again. And I'm the kind of lazy developer that will absolutely spend a ton of extra time at the beginning of a project automating pain points away so that I don't have to touch it again. When I graduated, our, at the time, campus director left to take a job as a program manager at JFrog. They were starting a new IoT team, trying to bring DevOps to the edge, and she poached me. So I went and worked at JFrog as an IoT software engineer for about a year. We built a really, really cool proof of concept demonstrating fast over-the-air updates for cars that don't even actually interrupt the driver. Like it could happen silently while the car was moving. And this was a fully interactive demo. We didn't use an actual car, obviously, because JFrog wasn't going to, spend 30 grand for something that we very well might brick. So we built
this right here?
Yes.
So I'll put this also in the chat for everybody to take a look at.
Yeah. So we used, we built little remote control self-driving cars. And that's what this is in my hands right now. It is an RC car with a Raspberry Pi 3B Plus in a compute module strapped to the back of it, and a little Raspberry Pi camera on the front. It runs by using an open source project called Donkey Car. And there's actually a whole community around these things. People make modifications to them, bigger batteries, multiple cameras for stereo vision, LiDAR cameras for better depth perception, that kind of thing, and they race them. The way it works is you drive it around a track n number of times, and then dump the steering and camera data back to a computer, train a model, throw the model back on the car, and it'll drive itself. But we thought that kind of sucked as an experience.
Sure.
So this little car is now running Kubernetes. We put Kubernetes on a Raspberry Pi, which at the time was kind of difficult. This would not have worked without K3S. But it relied on a patchwork of JFrog products and open source products, and we took software updates from something that could take up to 8 hours and required physical access to the car to something that takes about 35 seconds over the air for an application update, or about 5 minutes for a full firmware update. Pretty outrageous. And that got us a lot of attention, obviously.
I wanted to show our our viewers kind of like an idea of what this Kubernetes thing may look like. I'm just taking a guess. It could be this. Is a little bit. Hold on. I swear to God, this is gonna work. Okay. You tell me, Kat. Is it a little bit like that? Yeah.
That's accurate. That's accurate.
You just needed to use Kubernetes to get it done, but it's a little over-engineered.
It was a little over-engineered, but it was also like getting K3S is still hard to use, but it is easier to use than like full-blown Kubernetes, because it does abstract away some of the more complex problems people run into with Kubernetes. Like, really big ups to that project in general.
Oh yeah,
but it was the easiest way to get like fast over-the-air application level updates that supported things like rollbacks, because we had a bunch of like security checkboxes we had to hit. But it worked. We did it, and it got a lot of media attention, and awesome. People wanted to hear about it. And none of the other engineers on the team really cared about being on stage or giving presentations about what we did. So I ended up doing them. And our head of DevRel liked what I did, I guess. So he poached me off that team. And now...
Is that the gentleman with the hat?
Nope.
Okay.
That's our chief sticker officer, Baruch Sadigursky. The head of
I know.
DevRel is Stephen Chin, who came
Gotcha,
from
gotcha,
Oracle.
gotcha.
Yeah, he's
Very
really
cool.
cool.
And so, you've been able to now, what, just, we used to travel the world, all of us, in DevRel positions, but I guess now you're kind of doing what I'm doing, is trying to utilize the internet, your video, your audio, whatever it is you can to kind of make people view your content and obviously get the message through. And I guess that's what we're doing right here today, huh?
Yeah, it's been a rough adjustment going from being on an airplane like 4 or 5 times a month
Sure.
to being at home all the time. But I am presenting more than I was when I could travel. When I could travel, I gave 2 talks a month, maybe 3 if it was a really busy one. Now I think I've given like 40 talks since March.
Wow.
So it's been intense. It's a trade-off. I
So,
get to spend more time with my husband and my cats, but also I am not drinking in a hotel in Brussels right now.
sure. Well, I want to also make sure everyone knows about some of the stuff you're doing. I know this one is a big one. That is this coming up, or is this
Yep,
just? So there you go.
that's
Yep,
coming up.
in 16 hours. So wow, this is tomorrow for you. So I guess very very relevant. We talk about just how busy you are.
20 days
Even
and 16 hours. This is next month.
Oh, next month, 20. I missed
Yeah.
the 20th. My bad. I'm silly. But yeah, in a little less than a month, after a lot of the insanity in this next few weeks are by us, you'll be able to enjoy your time in November listening to Kat speak about gatekeeping and the DevOps revolution. So I hope that goes very, very well. I know you are an excellent speaker. I got to see you recently at the same, which was the event we were both at? Was
One of the
DevOps
DevOps
Days
days.
Buffalo?
Yeah, I
It
think it was
was.
it was either I spoke at Buffalo and Boston
I
in
did
the same week.
Buffalo.
Yeah, so it was Buffalo. We were both speaking at Buffalo.
Very cool. So what was your talk specifically at Buffalo about?
That one, I think, was the updates on the edge talk.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the one where I talk about the car demo. That talk
Gotcha.
is retired now because I've given it for a year, but there are about 1 billion YouTube links
Mm-hmm.
uh, of the talk. If anybody would like to watch it, you can just search for updates on the edge or updates for IoT by Kat Cosgrove. If you have questions about it, in each one of those talks, I give out my email address and Twitter handle. So I'm happy to talk about it with you if you decide to go watch that and you have questions. Also happy to provide some of the resources from that project. I can't hand out all of it because, a lot of it is proprietary, but I
Mm-hmm.
can hand out stuff like our Helm charts and the modifications we made to the Donkey library because it got to a point where it was fairly there was very little of the original Donkey library code left by the time
Mm-hmm.
we were done with that. And we made some pretty cool changes to the car, the ability to drive it with a race wheel instead of your phone, which is how it
Okay.
wants to be driven by default. So if you want to build one of these little things yourself, you can do it for like $250 and like 3 hours of your time. And it's really, really fun to use to badger your pets and coworkers and partners.
Well,
It's a fun toy.
if technology can be used for anything, it's probably to annoy somebody. I think that's kind of the par for the course now,
It
especially
is, yeah.
nowadays. Everything's kind of built to annoy someone else. But anyhow, what we're not trying to show off annoying technology today. I think what we're going to try to do is show off technology is going to help people do some easier stuff. And
Yeah.
so I think we talked about it just a second. And so I'm going to just bring this up first. 1 second. Wrong copy and paste. So what our main conversation today is going to be on, hey, you get out of here. We don't need you, Todd. Anyhow, we're going to be talking about JFrog Artifactory, and it is an enterprise universal repository manager. And there are a lot of repo managers out there. And I know I've worked with a few. This is going to be a first time I've really seen this in action. And so I see there's these differences, but Could you just give it to me in the super 101 cat version?
I sure can. So this actually is all included in the 101 workshop repo that Jay dropped in the chat for y'all. But if you aren't familiar with the term binary repository manager, it can sound a little bit overwhelming. I don't like to assume that anybody knows anything, so you're going to get the full 101 explanation. But Artifactory means that it can be used to manage build artifacts, which is compiled binaries, metadata about your builds, Docker images, Helm charts, whatever, regardless of the technologies you're using. A lot of big open source projects or big companies have a lot of different technologies in their stack. So if you're using Python or JavaScript or C# or Ruby or any of those, Artifactory can handle that all in one place instead of having these things live in different houses. It supports 27 different package types explicitly, but it also has a generic repository type for anything else. In the car demo, for instance, we used the generic repository to house the build cache from Yocto, which is a tool that lets you put together like custom Linux distributions for embedded Linux systems. It's really cool. This is not a replacement for source control, though. It's like the place your code goes to live after it's been written, built, or packaged, but before it's deployed.
So I think this is a great place to kind of get into this particular chart here. Do you want to kind of give us a little bit of an? Do you need me to like make this bigger, or can you see this?
No, I can see it. I'm good.
Great.
So this is an overview of like the entire JFrog platform. We have more products than just Artifactory. At the beginning, you've got your source control, GitHub, Bitbucket, whatever, and that flows into Artifactory. All of this could be managed by JFrog Pipelines, which is our CI tool. But if you don't want to use our CI tool, that's fine. You like Jenkins, you like Circle CI, that's okay. You don't have to use it, but it does come with most of the plans. So, up to you.
I will say we're Azure DevOps.
Also, you can use Azure DevOps. And yes, we make a point of integrating really cleanly with Azure DevOps, actually. We have a ton of like hype videos for that.
Mm-hmm. I've seen a few. How's the GitHub integration, would you say, around like actions?
Pardon?
Is there much around GitHub actions that you can say that you know of right now, or is it mostly around Azure DevOps?
Yeah, you can use GitHub actions.
Awesome.
You can use the JFrog CLI to use to go through GitHub actions. I think we have like an official action for that, actually.
Sure. So
that you can just import.
So for me, there's all this installation and configuration stuff that I've taken a look at. It's if I'm getting what I'm supposed to, these are mostly for server-based installations. If I was going to be using just a Linux machine or something like that.
Yeah, this is instructions for an on-prem installation. Y'all don't have to worry about that because it's like it's a one-click to deploy to Azure. You don't actually have to even like configure anything. If you go through the SaaS version, you just select your cloud provider. The instance we'll look at later that I already have up is on Azure. You can just click the like start free button in the upper right.
Yeah, I swore I signed up for one. I just can't remember where I logged in from. I will mess with that a little later. I will let you kind of give us more of a tour of it, but I see that what we can do to sign up is just go here to cloud.
Yeah, just go to cloud, scroll down, select your cloud provider, and it takes a few minutes to deploy, but then you're good to go with all of our products. The most important two, in my opinion, are Artifactory and X-Ray. Both of those come with the like free tier service level. X-Ray is a vulnerability scanning tool. And it's not just software vulnerabilities. It can also handle license compliance issues, though that's requires an elevated account. But sorry, that way you know when something is wrong with one of your packages. You set like a threshold of your comfort level, essentially, with certain vulnerabilities, because nothing really, once it hits a certain size, is totally free of vulnerabilities. But some vulnerabilities are just not worth worrying about. They don't allow a dangerous exploit, or there isn't a fixed version, so there's not really anything you can do about it anyway. But X-Ray can automate all kinds of actions based on the results of a scan. It can fail a build if it's integrated with your CI system. It can block downloads. It can send an email. It can call an external webhook. All kinds of stuff to make sure that you can automate actions if something hairy is found in one of your packages.
Great. So we've talked a lot about just how it starts to come together, and I'm curious if you could show me a little bit of the bells and whistles of your Artifactory login. So I know I signed up for an account and it gave me like a server or a username and password. So I'd be curious if you can kind of give me a run through of like what it looks like when someone kind of signs up and gets something going.
Yeah, let's go look at an instance that is already alive.
Rad. Why don't you go ahead and share your screen and I'll pop it in for everyone to look at.
Alrighty.
I'll let you do that. Cool.
So this is a free tier instance of the JFrog platform. So this is exactly what you would get if you signed up for one. This one is deployed on Azure, and it's already got some stuff in it because this is the one I use for the one-on-one workshops I give. It's got a wide variety of stuff in it, so that's why I like to use it. But this is what it looks like when you first log in. So you can see I've got these 4 packages hanging out in here, and I don't have anything in builds because this one isn't hooked up to a CI system. But in your artifacts tree, you see all of these different repositories. So Artifactory has 3 different repository types, local, remote, and virtual, and they serve different purposes. A local repository is just what it sounds like on the tin. It's a repository for code that is local to you. A remote repository is also fairly self-explanatory. It's code that is not local to you, like your project's dependencies. And a virtual repository exists to kind of like wrap those two into one envelope. And that's what you interact with most of the time. So these that are just the name of a package type up here, let me zoom in a little. These are your virtual repositories. These are your local ones. These are your remote ones. Gotcha. And it's pretty easy to add new ones. You can, of course, like if you need more than one like local Docker repo, you can create one individually, but there's also a quick setup that holds your hand quite a bit.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, so it's way, way, way less effort. And it just sets a bunch of defaults for you. So if I wanted to add like Go repositories, just click Go and create, and it's made them.
Chocolatey there as well. Just for just curious for our .NET people.
Let's see.
Let's take a look at what do we got.
We've got
NuGet.
Yeah.
Yeah, NuGet I think is probably perfect for what our people who do stuff with .NET. Also, what you've got Vagrant, so you can use just local, and of course, all these other languages and stuff like that. They're all meant, or RPM, the package management. They're all meant for you to just have a place to keep your stuff, if you will, going to that old need. Is everybody wants a secure place to keep their stuff, so eventually when they need it, it's there and it works.
Yeah, everybody wants a secure place to keep it. And the remote repositories here are particularly important because they act as kind of like a cache for stuff that's on NPM or PyPy or whatever. Because, every once in a while, some project on NPM gets taken advantage of.
Yes. I believe I've heard that story many times about like Bitcoin mining and
Yeah.
in NPM projects, because someone puts a little bit of code into it, and it just like all of a sudden you find out, why is the browser on my on this like single page web app like taking 99% of CPU, and then
Right. And
oops.
this gives you a little bit of like a buffer between you and the wider internet. With Docker making some changes now to their limits on polls and image retention, it also becomes a really important tool. It'll be limited to, as of November 1st, I think, it's going to be limited to 100 polls per IP address per 6 hours for anonymous users and 200 polls per 6 hours for authenticated free users. You can actually, if you're using Artifactory as a Docker registry, which is fairly common usage of it, you can authenticate by over here in the like admin module. You go to repositories, remote, and Docker remote.
And so
You
I guess
can
the and I guess the Docker remote here is if I was using something like an Azure Container Registry. And
Yes.
is this like, so then what I would do here is I go into basic, sure, and then what I would probably do is, it'd be here, the remote authentication, sure, okay, I see exactly here. What you would use is some sort of they're in the ACR in the Azure portal. There's a section where you have your credentials and server name, and so I can see where you can just pop that in and use the private blocker, if you will, to do the build process.
This is to make sure that you're not pulling from like public repos all the time and blowing through your limits. It's kind of it's more important now than I expected it would be in the first place, but this is what Artifactory looks like with actual stuff in it. We can take a look at put this npm package in here earlier. This is just like a crappy Reddit search, but you get a bunch of metadata about it, and the actual npm package is here. I didn't publish a checksum value. That's okay. And if it had been, I think it's been scanned by X-ray.
Oh, so all the individual packages that you put through Artifactory, then you can use X-ray to kind of do a security check on to make sure that there are any known vulnerabilities. Oh, and even in down to the individual Docker manifest on each layer.
Yeah. On Docker manifest is where it looks the coolest. Like X-ray and Artifactory are really, really, really tightly integrated together. X-ray works by
the violations thing look really cool. Sorry to interrupt. The violations.
Oh no, totally. I will show you those because they look super cool. But this is how you set one up. You define a policy that says, let's edit this so I can show you. That says, this is what I'm comfortable with. I'm saying that according to this policy, it should trigger a violation if it finds any vulnerabilities with a severity of medium or higher and generate a violation. I'm not having it do anything else right now, but you can see you can have it trigger a webhook or whatever.
And just so everybody, we bring you to just the real basics of what we're talking about here, is that everything that's going in, that every single package that we're building that's a product of building our applications, whether it's something related to our Node app, and eventually our generated package, we need somewhere to go, that artifact that gets delivered, the Docker, you name it. Whenever we put together one of these things, we need to ensure that it's secure and safe to actually put online. And so tools like this will actually do a scan of the package itself, or what I like right here, the manifests. And so if you're going to take an Azure container instance and you're going to load a Docker container, whether you're using something like this or Azure security services that we have, like, it's just important to keep your eye on what you're deploying.
It's really, really, really important. And like the cool thing about X-ray is this, like, the fail build option. So if you're using like Azure DevOps as your CI tool, X-Ray will like automatically fail the build if it finds something that violates this policy. It won't even continue. You don't have to worry about it. It's automated.
And that's the great thing about Azure DevOps. Lots of hooks between products to make this easy. There's so many APIs in Azure DevOps that you can use, and then it looks like your product is pretty extensible.
It is pretty extensible. It's really, really neat. I'm glad we work so well together.
Awesome.
But once you get a policy,
in work and in BS, we seem to really get well together, even at this moment. And so I think it leads us to kind of another thing I'd really like you to show me. I know you told me that you can kind of like start deploying, say, a Docker container, maybe to Azure. And is there a particular service that you know, like, there's a really great deployment method to, like Kubernetes or one of the other types of containers? Like, which normally your deploy target on Azure?
So if I was doing it, I would be using JFrog pipelines because I work for JFrog and it's part of the ecosystem. But pipelines has an Azure integration,
Sure.
just Azure keys, and it looks like this. So you should be able to just deploy to it's AKS is the Kubernetes service, right?
Sure. So Azure Keys is just going and getting a user from Azure, some sort of like Azure AD user that you get a username and a key pair for, and then you take it over here and it creates I guess a basic trust between the two. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and then like the pipelines lets you just write a bash. It just lets you bash script in here. So anything you could do with the Azure CLI, you could do here. That's how I would handle the deployment personally. Artifactory itself is just a house.
Gotcha.
So it can't deploy for you, but it does give you everything in one spot.
Sure.
So that you know what's going on. Like this is the result of a scan. That's like we call that an impact analysis graph.
Mm-hmm.
It shows us exactly where in a particular package a problem is, and it's the coolest looking with Docker containers. This is a very small container. It's just pulling Ubuntu. So it's not hyper impressive, but it gets the point across. So anything that exists in Artifactory, though, you should be able to automate deployment to a service of your choice. It just depends on the CI tool you were using. So with Azure DevOps can talk to Artifactory. Just go from there, deploy to your Azure service of choice. And you'll be able to still talk to X-Ray as well, get vulnerability information back. You'll have access to the build info.
And it looks like built into the marketplace.
It is built into the marketplace, yes.
Yeah, I'm going to bring it up right now just so everybody can take a look.
Let me stop sharing.
Let me do this. I just had it up. Dang it. There it is. But here are all the ones that are built right into Azure. So what we can do is deploy your Kubernetes and Docker registry to Azure. We can JFrog container registry and ARM template. Let's see. Let's DevSecOps that uses your source. So it's very cool. So let's take a look at this one. So I can do a JFrog container registry VM create. And so just like what we do almost everything in Azure, we go through a basic ARM template setup. And so what we're doing in this instance, so rather than using the straight cloud service that we would just do a local instance, if I'm right, of Artifactory, which is essentially what we're getting here, correct? Or
yeah, you're getting with the container registry option, you're getting a limited version of Artifactory that's intended to only function as a container registry. So it has access to the Docker and Helm repository types, as well as a generic repo.
Gotcha. So then we just go through the process of doing this. All right. And so, gotcha. So this is just another way of deploying this what is essentially the application. So
Yeah.
here's the question though: is once I get deployed, can you kind of show me in that workshop how I can actually see it in action?
Yeah. Let's look at something.
Because I love me a demo, Kat. I'll be real. I love me a demo.
Okay. Let's get her done then. I'm going to share my entire screen this time.
Ooh. Wow, really, really getting behind the breaking the fourth wall or whatever it is.
Yeah. So a cool thing when you first start using this is that Artifactory actually holds your hand like a ton. There is a set me up button up here. I'm looking in my Docker virtual repository. If you click that, I'm not going to pre-populate this because anybody watching on the internet will see all my keys and y'all don't need that information. But if you enter your password here, it'll pre-populate all of these commands for you with exactly what you need to throw something into a Docker repository.
Gotcha.
It's very, very convenient because, again, I am really lazy. Really, really
Well,
lazy.
ultimately, I think that one of the things we really get out of the stuff from automation that we try to do is we really just kind of trying to be lazy. You know what I mean? We're trying to be lazy so that the hard work that we get stuck doing sometimes, we can kind of blow through and it doesn't seem so scary. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I've got here a Docker file. It's not really doing much. It's just pulling Ubuntu 16.04. That's okay. We don't need to do it. We don't need it to do much. First, you got a Docker login. Actually, let me zoom in on my. There we go. Docker login. See if I remember the password for this. Probably not.
Been here, know this.
You know, it's just.
It's always when you do it live too.
Yeah, and they like have rules about the passwords.
Do
That's
you want me
okay.
to unshare for a sec if you need to do something?
Yeah, unshare for a sec while I figure out what my password is.
So, while Kat does that, you know what I think we should do? Let's watch this.
So should you use Azure Resource Manager templates or something like Terraform for your environment? And this is a very environment-specific question, and it's going to depend on what you're currently using. If you're already using ARM templates or Azure Resource Manager templates, then you can go ahead and continue using them. But the big difference is ARM templates are built for Azure. They deploy resources inside of Azure. Terraform uses the HashiCorp configuration language, and it can deploy across multiple clouds. It's kind of cloud agnostic. It uses a provider and resource model, whereas ARM templates only deploy Azure resources. So if you're trying to deploy across a portfolio of clouds or a portfolio of environments, even on-prem environments, Terraform would be a really good choice. Now, if you're already using ARM templates and you want to look at something like Terraform, that's totally cool and that's great. You can actually deploy ARM templates using Terraform. Terraform has a resource to deploy an ARM template. So say you've already got one and you're using it now, you can still use it and you can start transitioning into Terraform if need be.
Well, we're back.
Alrighty.
How'd your break go? Everything work out?
Yes.
Cool. So
All
here
right.
we go again. Here I go again on my own. So you log in with
right.
your credentials like you would any other Docker registry there.
Yeah, right. So you guys don't need to see my password, so we're not going to do this, but then you just build and tag it. I've got these commands like pre-written because they're a little bit long, and if there's any time to make a typo, it is during a live demo. You know what I'm saying? But
You
I'm in the
know,
same group.
I do so many live demos. I always have like a copy and paste kind of notepad somewhere so that I know whatever I'm going to do wrong, I can avoid as early as possible.
Yeah, like no matter how many of these I do, and I used to teach as well at a coding boot camp, no matter how often I do this, like as soon as I'm in front of people and I have to do something like really precise, even if it's something that I can do asleep, otherwise it just like all falls out of my brain, which is proof that humans are really, really, really bad at repetitive tasks and we should automate them.
Exactamundo. That's why we're talking about this.
Me screwing up my Docker login password, that is proof that you should absolutely automate everything in the world, because like your CI system should be doing that for you, not your fingers. Anyway, so we're going to build and tag. We're going to my Docker registry, catc101.jfrog.io/Docker. That's the name of my virtual repository. So if your virtual repository is called something different, call it that. But if you use the quick setup in Artifactory to set it up for you, it is going to be called just Docker. Then we're saying this is called my Docker image and its version is latest. Note the trailing dot because we are in the same directory as the Docker file. And it's small, so it's going to build really quickly. Then we just push it. And again, same syntax, Docker push to catc101.jfrog.io at my virtual repository, name of the image, version. Then, if you want to resolve from Artifactory, you just use Docker pull, and it's super familiar syntax. The address of your instance, your virtual repo, and the tag. Super duper familiar. And then you see it in a couple of different places. If we look at the virtual repo, you see here, it's really, really, really quick. And we get all of this additional metadata about it. This is some of the same metadata you would get if you ran a Docker inspect, but it's a little bit easier to consume in this form. If it had extra properties, they would be here, but these are the properties it just comes with. If there were any builds, they would also be displayed here, as well as, effective permissions. I have multiple users in Artifactory, because Artifactory does let you pretty tightly control users and groups to define who has access to what. So you get this little overview of who has access to what in this. It's not usually this compressed. I just have my screen zoomed in because it's easier on a screen share. But that way, you get lots of extra information about what is going on with your Docker repos. There's also the local repo. This one has stuff in it because it is a local image. And remote will also have stuff in it because the only thing that's going on here is that I'm pulling Ubuntu. So this is just Ubuntu. This is the whole image of mine. And it looks pretty similar with other languages. Let's open up PyPy. So I have this little sample package in here for Python that's just tagged version 001. That goes here, and it's a wheel. Same for local. There won't be anything in this one for remote because it is just like a binary tree. But it's fairly quick with any of these to deploy because you always have this set me up option here that really holds your hand through the whole process of putting whatever you need into Artifactory so that it can be accessed by other tools, so you can control access to it once it's built, get some security information about it. You can always resolve from Artifactory. This is the instructions for Debian. It's the same way for Go. Go is even actually much simpler, I think, because now that we have Go modules, it used to be a little bit hairier, but no need for that now. NPM, I know Jay is a fan of the JavaScript.
It's always something that it's easy to use. That's the way I use it. I don't really write any of these modules, but I definitely like using some of those easy frameworks to build stuff with, and that's why I choose to.
True. I haven't written JavaScript in a hot minute, but I actively like Vue. I like Vue.js quite a lot, actually. But it's really simple to set it as your registry. If you're using it's a scoped package, small change, then just npm login or do this. I just do this, dropping it into the npmrc file. Same thing for Python. You add some extra information to your PyPyRC file, and that handles it all for you. Then you've got two choices for deployment with JavaScript. You can add this to your package JSON, this line here, and then run npm publish, or you can do it along with the npm publish command at the same time.
Very cool.
Super clean. And then from then on, with either JavaScript or Python, you just use like pip install or npm install package name, and it will, instead of pulling it from npm or whatever, it'll pull it from your Artifactory instance. So you have that like extra layer of safety between you and whatever nonsense may or may not be happening with somebody's package being taken advantage of on npm.
So can you show me how like the pipeline portion of this kind of would happen toward like there's a pipeline service I think you mentioned where you could start using like the CLI, and I was curious if you could show me a little bit of that.
So there are actually two separate things. There's pipelines, which is our CI tool, and then there is just like a JFrog CLI that handles most things that Artifactory can do. I can show you what a pipeline looks like. This is a super duper simple one. It's not really doing a lot, but it's good for purposes of showing off. In this case, this is triggered by a commit to the Git repo this exists in. It just runs automatically. Over here in step 2, I am looking, it's pulling from the Git repo it exists in. So it has access to this Python project from the 101 workshop. We're going to cd into it, install Python 3 and pip, and pytest, and then run pytest. So anything you would be able to do in a Linux environment, in Ubuntu, you can script in here. But if you want to use the CLI, let's go over to GitHub and find that action. Which one of these would it be in? How do you search for actions on GitHub?
I think you got to go to the project and then just go and look at its actions. So if you go to the repository,
yeah,
and then if you go to the repository, and at the top you're going to see the actions link, and that's where you'll see all the different. Actually, no, you'll see the actions in the .github, at least the workflow files. But if you look at that actions at the top, that'll show you previous runs, I believe.
Yeah. This is an action I wrote to use the CLI.
Sure.
This one just uses, this one allows you to interact with Artifactory, but there is an official one.
Okay.
I just got to find it.
Well, no big deal, because we're kind of getting toward the end, so don't worry about it if you can't find it off the top of your head.
Yeah. The product team owns that, I think.
Gotcha. set up JFrog CLI in your GitHub Actions workflow. Very cool.
Yeah. So if you're using GitHub Actions, anything that you would ordinarily be able to do through the JFrog CLI, you can do inside of an action. So if you need to pull from Artifactory or send something to Artifactory, request information about a particular artifact before you make a decision somewhere within one of your actions, you can do that here, which is super cool. I love the CLI. I really like CLI tools better than UI tools personally, and I really like GitHub Actions. So this is
I'm a fan.
This is a good one for me.
So Kat, we're gonna start kind of rolling to the end, and when I do that, put on a little something for us to vibe as we kind of finish up. And so I wanted to thank you for kind of doing this with me. It's always fun to get a chance to have conversations, learn more about technology, and all that other fun stuff. So tell me, what is your big plan for Halloween this year?
Well, this Halloween actually is weird because my my best friend is eloping. Due to, the ongoing pandemic. So we have rented a cabin in the middle of nowhere out in Gatlinburg, just me, the maid of honor, the bride and groom, and the officiant, and we will be there over Halloween. They are getting married on the 30th. Halloween is actually my wedding anniversary, so it's unfortunate that I will not be home, but on the actual 31st, who knows? Howl at the moon, probably. Because we'll be in the middle of nowhere.
Well, I have like a just dress up at home, like with my wife and a friend kind of Halloween planned ourselves. But I tried to make this one as spooky as possible today. With my little bats in the video earlier and all that stuff. I wanted to have a really fun end to... I guess this kind of wild year. I want to be able to have a little fun and have some music and have some friends talk about technology and stuff. So thank you so much for being part of this, Kat. What do you got coming up after? Anything more interesting stuff other than all day DevOps?
Yeah, I've got all day DevOps. I have a small spot at the Software Circus Halloween themed cloud native conference, which is cool. You should check that out because I'm in costume for that. It's very exciting. On the 19th of November, I will also be teaching another DevOps 101 workshop, the full 2 hours. This one not gated behind a conference registration like the last two have been. So if anyone out there is not super familiar with DevOps and would like a super hand-holdy, very basic hands-on walkthrough to kind of get your feet wet, come on, do that with me. All you have to do is register for a webinar. There's no money or conference involved. Just free because I like to help folks.
Can you have? Would you mind tweeting that information
Happy
out
to.
A little bit after? And I'll make sure I retweet it for our and put it in the notes so people can find it. But anyway, Kat, thanks so much. I know I'll be talking to you soon. Enjoy the rest of your day. I know it's still a little early there for you. I'm rolling towards the end of my day here on the East Coast, so I hope it works out. And you have a great rest of your Thursday and an awesome weekend.
Thanks, you too. Thanks for having me.
Peace. Hey, it's always fun to have a friend, and that's what I got this time. I got to have a friend on. We got to have another great conversation. Hope to have another cool friend on next week to do another really rad conversation about Azure, products that work with Azure, maybe just things like this, just BSing about stuff. Anyway, the show works because you're a part of it. Always send your questions, reach out on Twitter. You know how to at this point, but it's at jdestro, at AzureFunBytes. Kat is at Dixie3 Flatline. You will be able to get everything in the show notes. It's been really, really cool to have you all here again. Adios. Thanks again. We'll catch you next time.